Hey guys, it's Jess, and I'm super excited to be participating in the Altenew Build a Flower release for May 2019. This month's flower is the Snapdragon, and I am totally in love with this whole stamp set. It is super, super gorgeous. I do have another card video that I put out today that features another way to use this card, so if you're interested in checking that out, I have it linked down in the description below. You should totally check out both cards because they are completely different, and I think it's really cool to see different ways to use the same stamp set, so I would definitely check that out. So to get started with this, I'm using a couple different colors of Altenew inks. This one is called Frosty Pink, and I'm just stamping the base layer of the large Snapdragon flower. So this is the one with the most solid space, or the most solid image of all of them. And then as you get darker color, you use the ones that have less and less solid space because those are your shadowy areas. So they've done a really great job giving you directions in the stamp set, kind of drawing off or marking off areas that are supposed to be used together. And then you also do get the layering stamp guide with your stamp set every time. Now you do want to be sure to get right over top of your stamp set. I didn't do a super great job here of getting it lined up perfectly. I was okay with that because the technique that I wanted to do for today's card was a little bit more abstract and sort of like loose watercolor. So you'll kind of see as the card comes together why I wasn't super worried about getting it perfectly lined up. But if you do want it to be perfectly lined up, I would definitely recommend getting right over top of that stamp so that you can really line up those images well. That way you don't have your stamped images being a little bit off-centered or not quite lined up right. So I'm going to go back in. So the second color was called Coral Berry, and then this third color is called Ruby Red. These colors go perfectly together. They are a match made in heaven. And I really like these ones. They also, actually all of the inks that I'm using came in a set together. It was an ink collection. So it was these three pinks, two greens, and a black. And I'm actually using all of those on this card today, so that's pretty cool. Now this last color, Ruby Red, is my darkest, so I'm just, again, layering up those stamps. Look how the stamp just comes to life as you add the darker color. I think this has got to be one of the coolest things in the stamping industry, these layering stamps, especially with how detailed those floral images are. It's just such a crazy concept to be able to put something like that together, even though I can't draw and I can't paint or do anything like that on my own, but with these stamps, I have that option. It's just really, really neat. Okay, so forewarning, this is not how you are supposed to use these stamps. I want to put that out there because I don't want you guys to be trying to do it like this and be like, I don't understand how this works. Why do these go together like this? This is not how they work. I wanted to use them a little bit differently just to show that you can, but I kind of wanted a different vibe for my card, so I didn't layer them on top like you're supposed to. So this is not how this is supposed to be used. I totally used it like in a kind of a weird way, but I was really happy with the way that it turned out, to be honest, and I am glad that I chose to do it like this. So I started off with Frayed Leaf, and then I did move on and use Forest Glade as the darker color, so that layered on some darker green there. And I like the way that these colors all blend perfectly together. Obviously they came in a set, so they're meant to work together, but they really, really do. I really was excited about how nicely they looked. I don't know, they just looked really nice. Okay, so here I go with the Forest Glade. This is the darker of the two greens, and I just layered them up on top. Again, this is not how you're supposed to use these, but I really like how it looked, so, you know, I was happy with it. You have creative license to use these products however you want. There is a way that you're supposed to use them, like the guide or the reference, but that doesn't mean you have to use them that way. You can totally use them however you want. Whatever you think looks good, go with that. There's no hard fast rule about like you can only use this in this one way or else. It's your stamp, you bought it, use it how you want. But anyway, so you'll kind of see in a little bit why I'm doing these weird kind of leafy things up at the top. So the look that I was going for was to have a big, bulky mass of floral stuff down at the bottom. So all green, all of my floral stuff. And then up at the top, I wanted it to kind of like spill, almost look like spilled watercolor, if you will. Like I wanted the color to go up towards the top, but not completely cover the card. I wanted it to have like a messy sort of loose watercolor feel up at the top. So what I'm doing here is I'm using a water brush and I am painting on some of the color. I'm not applying water to the ink pad. I'm just using well, there is water in the barrel, but I'm not squeezing any water out on my ink pad. I don't want to mess up anything with the ink pad, so I just was brushing the tip of that on, kind of like a paintbrush. I didn't squeeze any water out. And then I just painted that directly onto my cardstock. Now this is watercolor cardstock that I'm using. I'm using the smooth side. And here I go with making my loose watercolor background up top. So what I'm doing is on the backer sheet for my stamp set, I smushed on some ink from the ink pad. So I've started out with my frayed leaf. I'm using a separate piece of plastic. I did spritz that ink with some water, using a separate piece of plastic to kind of have a little more control of my ink and where I'm putting it. Then I go back in with a darker color, spritz that with water as well, and do the same thing. So I pick up the ink. I use my finger to sort of concentrate it if I want it only in like a really specific area. And then I just kind of go around putting it where I think it will look nice. This is all just personal preference, kind of figuring out where you like it, where you want to add some more shadow or depth. And that's that. So another way to get a little bit more dimension if you have a limited color range, like, so for example, I didn't have a darker green than this, but I wanted a little bit more of a dark green. I went ahead and wiped that off. I smushed the ink right back on there in the same color. So that's that Forest Glades color. And then instead of putting water on it, I just picked it up with the plastic directly from the sheet. So I used the plastic to plastic transfer. Now you're going to get a more gritty look like this because it's picking up those individual dots of color as the ink kind of pools up on the plastic. It's going to pick up more of those individual little dots or blobs. So you get less of a loose look and more of kind of like a grainy sort of look, but I think that actually was kind of perfect. So just be mindful of that if you want to use that technique as well. So now I'm going back in with the Forest Glades and just stamping a few of the little leafy bits just to kind of, I don't know, add a little bit of interest, a little more dimension, add a couple little more dark areas just so that you get a nice contrast of colors there. This is totally random. I really didn't have a plan when I started this, but I was like, I kind of had an idea, like I wanted to do some sort of watercolor feature and I wanted it to be loose at the top so I could stamp a sentiment up there. But that was kind of it. That's all I had in my mind. So all of this was just sort of fly by the seat of my pants. And when I got to the next step, I was like, okay, now what? So I did decide to go back in and add a little bit more color to some of those lighter areas so that it didn't seem quite so splotchy. And I did that with the light color as well. So now I'm grabbing a sentiment from More Than Words. This is a gorgeous kind of scripty sort of sentiment set. This one says life is beautiful, and I'm using that black ink from my little set of 6 inks just to stamp that on there using my mini Misty, making sure that I get a perfect stamp. It's nice to do this, especially on a watercolor paper, but you guys know that I always like to use my Misty for sentiments because I'm not great at lining it back up, just in case I don't get a perfect stamp the first time. So I did go ahead and add some of the ink back to my little clear plastic piece to do some splatters. Spritzed it with just a little bit of water and I'm tapping that paintbrush to add just a couple of little splatters. I'm using that white piece of paper to cover up my flowers so that I don't get any speckles on the floral parts where I don't want it. I put a piece of like fun foam or craft foam on the back of this and used double-sided tape to adhere it to an A2 size card base in white. right. That's top folding. And then all I needed to do was just add a couple of little sequins. I wasn't sure how I wanted this to go, so I kind of played around a little bit with the placement of them. And then I was finally happy with it. I actually kind of wish I would have left it just like that. I liked that a lot. I was happy with the end result too, but sometimes, I don't know, when you see things played back again, you're like, oh, that was really pretty. I should have left it like that. So I'm just using some glue to adhere those clear sequins to my card. And then I used a little bit of glossy accents to fill in the sequin so that it wasn't just an empty sequin, but it had a, I don't know, it almost looks like a gem, sort of, or kind of like those clear droplets, but not really. I don't know. They have a really cool look. I think I learned this from Kelly Latavola, but I can't remember. But yeah, I really like the way that that looks. So that is our card for today. Be sure you pop over and check out my other card featuring this stamp set, and make sure that you check the description down below for the link to the blog hop. There's prizes to be won, so don't miss out on that. If you like this video, give it a big thumbs up. Subscribe to my channel for more inspiration and videos like this. Click that bell notification icon to be notified every time I post a new video and go live. And I'll see you guys again in the next video. Bye!